Morning, everyone. Pastor Coates has been released from jail, or is being released from jail. The last I heard, he is being released very soon. I don't know if he's actually out, but here's the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Breaking news: Pastor James Coates to be released from jail as Crown withdraws charges. Usually when the Crown says, "Oh yeah, we're not going to charge you anymore," you can get out right away. So I don't know if he's actually at home with his family, but who knows? But he should be soon if he's not already. So that is great news. I'm happy about that. And Rex Glacier says the state had him in prison since February 16th, and then just says, "Adios, sorry for the inconvenience." How China-grade barbaric is that? I don't care what you think of this person, but since when is that how we treat people? Good thing for the state. He's a white male. I don't know why. Good thing for the state he's a white male, but there it is. Here's another one. Charges dropped. BC mom cleared after shocking arrest for refusing to mask up on public because there is no statute that says you can be forced to wear a mask in BC law. These are edicts that can't be enforced, and all tickets issued will be thrown out of court. Yes, they will be. It is a year. It's a year. Here's my yesterday after I got showered t-shirt. And so my St. Patrick's colors are today. And Miss Elliott goes through 2 minutes of talking about how a year of this is somehow tolerable, or that we've somehow done a good job. This isn't a good job. This isn't out of their control. This is completely made by the government. The government has created this problem. The government ignored the people and called them racist, and not this level of the government necessarily, but the federal government called them racist when there was concern about people flying into Canada from infected areas, because that was happening. And when the public health didn't act and said there's no real worry, there's nothing really that anybody should be worried about, and people pushed back on that, and then all of a sudden the trap snapped shut. We demanded lockdown, and we got it. And we have not been able to convince our elected leaders since then that this is no longer a good idea, nor is it tolerable. And yet, after a year of emergency powers, after a year of extending emergency orders a month at a time, with not any very good metrics to back up these extensions, they're not saying this is the reason, right? They're saying, well, I'll show you what they're saying. We'll get to that. Variants of concern. But all of this to say, after a year with an emergency happening, I still don't hear anybody talking about trying to get back to normal. I still don't hear any leadership talking about how the response has been absolutely horrific. How what they've done has been an abject failure by any measure. We have done poorly in the management of this crisis. Nobody has said that. Nobody has said, man, they've all said, oh, we've done wonderfully. And if you look at it against the United States, if you look at it against for vaccine rollout, let's say, right? If you look at it against other places for opening, let's say Florida or North Dakota, right? For Alberta, right? Like you could compare apples to apples there, right? A little bit for population density and stuff. There's absolutely no reason why this crisis is so badly managed. The most expensive, highest unemployment in the G7, to borrow Mr. Poilievre's speaking points. But when we get to that kind of situation, and when we get to a situation where the only option that is being discussed seriously by leadership for this next wave that is unavoidable, says the experts, and I'll get to that, is continued lockdowns. That's it after a year? And you're trying to tell us you've done a good job? No, you haven't done a good job. You've done a very, very bad job. And were it up to just me, I would have fired you 6 months ago in favor of letting everybody make up their own mind. Honestly. And freedom is messy. Freedom has no guarantees. But this is guaranteed to do more harm. And anyway, so this is 2 minutes. I'm not going to listen to it. Christine Elliott says, 1 year ago today, our government declared a state of emergency to protect the health and safety of Ontarians. It's for your safety, comrade. Thank you to all our healthcare heroes for rising to the challenge and going above and beyond to be there when your patients and the province need you most. Okay. Here is Danielle Kutzen. I think I've got that right, but it could be wrong, so sorry if I got that wrong. She's an American, I believe, or he's an American. He's an American. And he says, I think this thread is as applicable in Canada as it is in the United States, so I'll read through it. Last spring, we were told that putting the entire population under a form of house arrest for an open-ended period of time was the only way to prevent millions of Americans from dying of COVID in the following few months. Last summer, we were told that we could continue or control COVID with test and trace, but could not end the pandemic unless we wore masks. But if we did all wear masks, we could go back to normal in 4 weeks. Last fall, we were told that COVID lockdowns would never again be necessary because we had test and trace. And if we all wore masks, we could all go back to normal in 4 weeks. This winter, we were told that because our bad behavior, we had lost control of COVID. For unexplained reasons, one mask is no longer deemed sufficient to end the pandemic. We now need 2 or more masks per person, along with 2 or more vaccine shots. Coming up, number 5, this spring, we will be told that the only way to end the pandemic is if we all are vaccinated, all wear masks, and test and trace, and get annual vaccine booster shots, and wear 2 masks, and never shake hands again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We're at the point where shame on us, right? We're at the point where shame on us. The goalposts keep moving. They're not shy about that. They do it with impunity. They don't care what you think. And what's next? We'll get to what's next. We will get to what's next in the next few tabs, actually. But Randy Hillier says, we have now lived under authoritarian rule in Ford Nation, Ontario for 1 year. An unknown COVID command table, not the legislature, makes the rules, and government refuses to uphold the Constitution while our courts are dysfunctional. Watching Ford Nation presser yesterday, we must ask, how much further will the junta and the COVID command table push their absolute authority? Did we have a coup d'etat while we were distracted by the PH computer models and exaggerated projections? Very scary stuff. In Florida, after a year of criticism, this is CNN, by the way, after a year of criticism by health experts, mockery from comedians, and blistering critique from political rivals, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is standing unabashedly tall among the nation's governors on the front lines of the coronavirus fight. Meaning his approach was right. Being open was right. That was the right thing to do, right? Doing the lockdowns and destroying our economy, the wrong thing to do, right? Joe Warmington says, in the Toronto Sun's 50 years, this will go down as a classic front page from Adrienne Barta and her editors, Brian Lilly. And it says, Doctatorship. Yep. Yeah, I'm glad people are catching up to this. This is very concerning because, well, I mean, like, when there's no accountability, when there's no way to hold the leadership who is supposed to make the rules accountable. When they say it's not me, it's the medical health officer, and then you deal with the medical health officer who stonewalls you and doesn't deal with any of the issues, how can you get any kind of satisfaction from or any kind of change in the policy? There's no possible route to that. If you are insulated from actually addressing the issue with the people who can make the decisions and relegated to dealing with the advisor of the politician, to appeal to the advisor of the politician to please stop destroying the economy. Stop, because we have, examples of places that have opened with similar populations to Ontario that have done just fine. None of the variants of concern or any wild projections have come to pass. And yet, we're still here under this doctatorship. Here's Brian Lilly's column. When all this is said and done, when COVID-19 and the restrictions brought in by politicians no longer dictate our days, there's one major change we need to make to our public health laws and regulations. We need to strip public health doctors of some of their arbitrary powers to ensure we never live under a doctatorship again. Thanks to the politicians wanting to ensure that every decision, wanting to ensure that every decision they make has cover, they and we in the media have elevated the position of public health doctors to that of omnipotent God instead of what they really are, medical advisors. In a democracy such as ours, there is no way that unelected doctors should wield so much power and authority, enough to force us to close schools, businesses, change our entire way of life. Yet this is where we are in Ontario, thanks to a system deeply in need of reform. If you doubt for a minute the doctors are really the ones in charge in Ontario, look no further than what the Premier Doug Ford said on Tuesday. Quote, I've got to get a green light from Ontario's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Williams, and the local medical officers of health, Ford said when I asked him about the possibility of allowing youth sports to return in Ontario to the degree it has elsewhere. Quote, the doctor makes the decision. He doesn't advise, he makes the decision for the premier. This is wrong. When I followed up by asking Ford about his responsibility, things got worse. Quote, I'm going to be very frank. There's no politician in the country that is going to disagree with the chief medical officer. They just aren't going to do it. They might as well throw a rope around their neck and jump off a bridge. They're done, Ford said. I don't like that imagery. I think that's poor choice by Ford. The premier also added that if he allowed some things to open up in Ontario that the local medical officer disagreed with, then the local medical officer could simply slap a Section 22 down. That section of the Health Promotion and Protection Act allows the local medical officer to impose conditions contrary to provincial rules. Now some argue that we must listen to the doctors and that politicians should have no say in these matters. First off, that is not democratic and goes against the basis of our system. Secondly, if you think all doctors think alike, then you aren't paying attention. There have been local medical officers who have disagreed with Williams. There are doctors claiming we're in a third wave and need to lock down harder, while others, like York Region Medical Officer Dr. Karim Kurji, sorry, I forgot that wrong, said that we're not in a third wave. At the federal level, we just saw the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, NACI, reverse course under political pressure and say that AstraZeneca vaccine is acceptable for Canadians over 65. The more than 15 doctors on NACI had disagreed for weeks with doctors and scientists at Health Canada. Doctors are not all powerful, all-knowing beings who must be obeyed lest we anger the COVID gods. They are people just like the rest of us with a specialization in health. Somehow we have decided that they should run the entire economy, our entire society. Doctors need to be listened to. Their advice should be considered at every turn, but they should not be in charge. Not unless we want to start electing our medical officers at the same time we elect MPPs and mayors. I don't want to do that. Why double the work? Like, if the MPPs and mayors are abdicating their duty, then remove them, and then we'll just elect the officers of health. But then, in order to be a public servant, you have to just be a doctor, right? Is that the system that we want? Because that's the system that we've got. Honestly. People are not happy about this. Strict 3-week lockdown needed to stop explosive COVID-19 variants. Oh no, the COVID-19 variants. Do you know I mentioned this yesterday, but in the UK, it's the Philippines variant that's of concern, right? That's why we're talking about variants of concern, because they didn't want to they didn't want to say specifically which one, because you could look that country up and how they're doing and then say, hey, stupid, we've got the internet, right? So here we are. Anyway, New Blue Party of Ontario says, I will always listen to the chief medical officer and his team. Very, very simple, because they're professionals when it comes to healthcare. I'm not. Doug Ford, March 16th, 2021. And this news article about the strict 3-week lockdown was released yesterday, the 17th. So Toronto's been under lockdown since October. Right, they've been in gray or stay-at-home order since October, and we're to believe that just 3 more weeks. Sure, it's just 3 more weeks. Why not 3 more weeks? Right? Hey, Joe Warmington says, "What about getting a second opinion? There are many doctors who don't agree with lockdowns. Are those people ever consulted or their suggestions considered, debated? Ultimately, if doctors are calling the shots for the economy and freedom, they should be elected and face questioning." Everybody is calling for this. This has kind of been bubbling, like this line of, if our democracy means anything, we should have a say in this. There should be some public debate, as is expected in our democracy. There should be conversations happening. There should be public representation, and the public is not being represented in this. Oh, sorry, man. The public officer of health told me that we got to lock down. We got to lock down. Sorry. Not my fault. The clock on the wall says 8 p.m. If you have kids, it's not your fault. It's the clock on the wall's fault, right? So it's not me. I wish that I could talk with the clock on the wall and make it not 8 o'clock, but it's 8 o'clock, and you know that 8 o'clock is bedtime. Darn clock. I can't believe that clock keeps going 8 o'clock right now. And then it's the clock's fault. It's not your fault. And it's the same trick the politicians are using here on dough-headed people who fall for that, right? Like kids, right? Sometimes, right? And the public is not dough-headed because they're stupid. They're dough-headed because they're not paying attention, right? Because they don't have enough time to pay attention or whatever. But it's the same trick. It's the same trick. I am not going to accept responsibility for this. It's the clock on the wall, man. It's not my fault. It's the medical officer of health who can't be held accountable, right? That's it. Here's Ryan O'Connor. John Tory is talking about modifying the gray zone for outdoor dining, outdoor fitness, and other areas. This is insulting. This is insane. They just keep changing. The rules mean nothing. It's like we've all agreed to these rules and nobody's signed to these rules. Nobody's debated these rules, but we've been told we've all agreed by this rule, these rules. And now John Tory's like, oh yeah, going into the next summer. You remember last summer when we had gyms open and blah, 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 blah. This year we can't do that because variants of concern. That's what they're going to do. Sorry, guys. I wish that I was wrong. I wish I could convince more people in my immediate circle that I was more right, and then we could get out of here before they stop flights out. I'm worried about that. Like, I would say 30% worried about that. 25 to 30% worried about that right now. I think as soon as I get to 50%, other people will be worried like 15%. Right? It's difficult. It's difficult saying, there's a hurricane out there, right? Look at this. And somebody says, yeah, but it's beautiful. But I say, there's a hurricane out there and it's coming here. And it's hard to convince people when you're the only one who sees it, right? And it's hard not to feel like Chicken Little, right? Am I just complaining too much? I don't think so. I feel kind of like this interpreter here. I don't think so. I desperately hope I'm wrong. I don't want to live in communism. That's the underlying tone I'm trying to convey here. And the concerning thing is, it seems like with all of the goalpost moving, we live under communism, right? Just 2 more weeks, comrade. It's for your safety, comrade. Don't worry about it too much, comrade. And the closed borders, they just closed the borders for another month. The land border across with the United States. All sorts, that kind of stuff makes me think, man, it's very concerning what's going on. But the nature of just 2 more weeks and all that other stuff seems to lull a whole lot of people into, it's going to get better. The problem with it though, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but whatever, it's my show. The problem with it though is that once you have gone a year and moved the goalposts as much as you have, as these people have, there's no touchstone back to reality at this point in time. Like, how many kids is this just now normal, right? How many people are just, as a matter of course, walking off the sidewalk as you walk towards them, right? How many people feel uncomfortable around unmasked other people in public? It's very, very damaging. Our entire society has changed, right? We don't have a touchstone to get back to normal. We are going to have to fight for everything. And I saw a tweet this morning, maybe I should have tagged it, talking about an Alberta company that said masks are now voluntary and by choice. Wear them if you want to, and we're not going to make you wear them. And everybody took the masks off, and everybody was very happy about it for the rest of the day in that office, says the person in the tweet. And is that a touchstone back to reality? Is that a touchstone back to normal? I don't know. I don't know what's going to solve this very serious problem, but I don't want to live in communism. And I would love to be wrong that we're sliding towards communism, but all of this says we're there, man. We're there. It's too late, right? It's too late. And now you can kind of get out, but it's very costly. Very costly. There's a lot of cost to that, right? And who knows? Who knows, right? And man, if you could predict the future. Oh, if you could predict the future. Anyway, strict 3-week lockdowns needed to stop explosive COVID-19 variant growth, Ontario Science Table says. So I said at the beginning of this kids going back to school, I said, when they extended April, the March break to April, I said, this is going to coincide with the uptick. They're going to lock them down. I think they're going to use the April break to either dismiss the kids to summer or say back to online learning, you kids, shucks, gosh darn it, we can't get control because of these variants of concern. I'm going to show you as well. Somebody sent me a message asking for the links for when they increased the PCR tests. And somebody said they didn't increase the PCR test, they increased the variant of concern tests. So I'll break that down a little bit too, but I've got those links today because I went back and the tweet has been removed. The tweet that talked about the February 15th increase to 35 cycles from 30 cycles of the variant of concern tests. So they would take all the positive tests. So let's say there's 100 positive tests, and all the ones that are over 35 cycles that are positive, those go to variant of concern testing. Okay? That's how the variants of concerns are increasing, right? So I'll get to that. A three-week lockdown in certain regions of the province is necessary to blunt the explosive growth of variants of concern, Ontario's COVID-19 Scientific Advisory Table says. Dr. Peter Juni, the science director of the advisory table, believes Ontario could see between 2,500 to 5,000 new cases of COVID-19 per day in a few weeks if the current trends continue. Modeling. Ontario recorded more than 1,500 cases on Wednesday, the highest single-day total since early February, owing in large part to the variants of concern, which account for more than half of the new cases. What we're talking about here predominantly is the Golden Horseshoe. The Golden Horseshoe has a major problem, and we need to tackle this, Juni told CTV News Toronto. Cases from Toronto to Niagara Falls have been steadily increasing over the past few days, triggering alarm among health experts, and healthcare advocates who have warned that the rise in transmission will lead to the third wave. If you look at the 7-day average from early March, it was about 1,000 new cases per day. If you look at it now, it's about 1,300 new cases per day in the province. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogach told CP24 that's a real trend and it's going up. To make it without a renewed lockdown in the situation we're in, that's next to impossible unless a miracle happens. This is not about miracles. This is about biology and epidemiology here, says Dr. Juni. When asked how lockdowns could be avoided, Dr. Juni suggested even strict adherence to public health measures, including avoiding all indoor spaces except for essential trips, wouldn't be enough to escape a third wave. Quote, we would need to dramatically change. Everybody change our way of approaching this. Is it possible? Has anybody shown you know that this can happen worldwide? No, nobody has. So in order to do this worldwide, the whole world has to change. All of Canada has changed. We have fallen a long way from where we've been, right? Get your mask on. All sorts of crazy stuff. Here is the two links that I was talking about. One is the archived link from the this is the current link. So the current link says 35. Okay, no, this is the archived link. I'm in the way here, but I'll move myself out of the way here. Hold on. Archive link, and it says multi-target PCR assay positive with a CT of 30, and then here is 35. And it says as of February 3rd, but this was taken on January 26th. You can see at the top there, but I believe the original was posted on February 15th. Or February 17th, because they changed it on the 16th. But regardless, I think that this is concerning. Why are we still cycling the CT scans that high? That's very high. Here's Roman Baber moving into fighting this, I guess. He says, I sued the Attorney General of Ontario for our right to protest, pray, and gather outdoors. The risk of transmission outdoors is exceedingly low, but the government's outdoor restrictions deny Ontarians their fundamental freedoms. Yes, in a whole bunch of different ways. They're protesting outside of Doug Ford's house again. Outside Ford Nation's Etobicoke home today, protesters and police display a message. No more lockdowns. No more lockdowns indeed. Here's David Sweet. He says, there have been local medical officials who have disagreed with Dr. Williams. There are doctors claiming we are in a third wave and need to lock down harder, while others, like York Region Medical Officer Dr. Kurji, says that we are not in a third wave. So, this was supposed to be earlier. This was supposed to be the link to the article I read, which is why you've already heard those quotes. But yeah, it's a very interesting situation when a whole bunch of doctors disagree. How do you decide which one's right? Well, Doug Ford decides, and Doug Ford acts accordingly. And so, lockdowns are the way to go. And the only way to go after a year of crisis. Is this reasonable? Is this an acceptable response to this emergency? I don't think so. After a year, nobody's saying we're almost back to normal, thank goodness. We can open the kids' baseball and have a great summer and enjoy yourselves. No. Fear, fear, fear. Despite the fact that we've got other places open completely. Wild. Jean-Marc Benoit, he's an MD, and he's on Twitter. I think I follow him. He says, Informed Consent in Ontario Healthcare Consent Act 1996 says, elements of consent 11.1. The consent must relate to the treatment. The consent must be informed. The consent must be given voluntarily. No coercion. The consent must not be obtained through misrepresentation or fraud. We'll look at this in a minute. Ottawa tightens rules for student and self-isolation to protect schools against vaccine virus variants. Ottawa students who have been identified as being in close contact with someone who has COVID-19 associated with a variant of concern will now be required to stay home longer if they choose not to get tested for the virus, Ottawa Public Health said. OPH advises close contacts who have been sent home to self-isolate to get tests, but it's not mandatory. Close contacts must stay home for 14 days from the time they're exposed, regardless of whether they get tested. Students cannot be required to show negative COVID-19 tests before being allowed to return to school, according to provincial guidance on control of COVID-19 in schools. The change means that close contacts associated with the virus variants will have to stay home for 24 days instead of the usual 14 days if they don't get tested. If the children do not seek testing, they are added to a school do not attend list for additional 10 days after completing their 14-day incubation period, OPH said in a statement. The virus variants spread more easily and quickly. They can't do that. They can't do that. This is coercion. This is this is punishment for not getting tested. How dare you not get tested? You get 10 more days of prison, prisoner. Unbelievable. Here's Canadian news. Masks can make it harder for young people to learn to communicate and socialize. Oh, thanks. Thanks, CBC. But researchers say there are some simple things we can do to help kids in a masked society. Did you know you lived in a masked society? Too late. Did you want to live in a masked society? Too late. You do. You live in one, and it's too late to change it now. Because we can't even, it's my body, my choice. No, you better get tested or you are a month in your house, buddy. Sorry about your luck. You're not going anywhere. In the UK, mask wearing all day for children in school is cruel and unscientific. It is. Face masks in the classroom are causing physical harm to children. Ministers have been warned amid reports of breathing difficulties, headaches, and dizziness. Children around the country are suffering from a range of side effects, including light headaches, fatigue, and facial rashes, according to a symptom tracker launched by the parent campaign group Us For Them. The tracker, which was launched at the end of last week, has so far gathered over 50 reports of youngsters suffering shocking physical reactions to face masks. Maybe I should do this. I could probably do this. Wouldn't take much to put something like this together. It comes amid rising pressure on the government over its latest guidance on masks, which says they should be worn by secondary pupils in lessons as well as anywhere indoors at school where it's not possible to socially distance. They said the teachers are putting children under extreme pressure to wear masks, adding staff make pupils feel guilty if they ask to take a mask break. Don't ask, just take it off. Another said their child, who has to wear a mask for at least 7 hours a day while at school, has developed feelings of tightness in the chest and migraines. Earlier this month, the Prime Minister faced a Tory backlash over face masks in the classroom, with 32 MPs demanding that the measure is dropped after Easter. Where are our MPs? Where are any elected officials at all saying anything about this? Aaron O'Toole, he's like, you know what? Justin Trudeau hasn't gone far enough in masking. He hasn't said that, as far as I know. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Okay, back to this. Boris Johnson was told in a letter from the MPs that it is just not good enough to impose the measures on millions of secondary pupils, given that the evidence that it will help prevent the spread of coronavirus is pretty thin. One member said that her daughter, who attends an all-girls grammar school in Gloucester, has developed headaches and rashes on her face from wearing a mask all day. I told her to wear a lanyard to show that she's exempt from the mask, but she said people who wear lanyards get called Trumpies. In the UK? Not Camerons? Okay. The mother said, explaining that this is a derogatory term referring to former U.S. President Donald Trump's anti-mask stance. So she dutifully wears a mask, even though I know it makes her uncomfortable and gives her a headache. It's really shocking that we're 1 week in and already hearing multiple anecdotal reports of children suffering what looks to be really worrying symptoms of physical harm, she said. It's hard to believe that we're in a situation where children are being made to do something which appears to restrict their breathing. How bad does it have to get before ministers sit up, it says here, stand up and notice? It has to get pretty bad, because in Canada, our ministers are saying, this is great. Wonderful job. Golf clap. Oh, I've even got one. Hold on. Terrible. Kingston Area Public Health revises rules to allow live music, relaxes serving hours until the end of April. Do you like living in a fiefdom governed by an unelected medical officer of health? Right? Some are expanding live music. Others are locking kids down, right? Make sure you wear your mask, children. It's very interesting. Here's the Ottawa Citizen. It says, while live music is now allowed, it must be low enough volume to allow normal conversation. Reads the statement issued by KFL&A Public Health. Karaoke and dancing are not permitted. Patrons at bars and restaurants must provide contact information and remain seated except while picking up takeout. The new order takes effect a minute after midnight on March 22nd, or just as the current one ends. It's a sad place that we live. It's a sad place that we live in right now. That's sad. And we've done this to ourselves. We need to demand not to live here anymore. We need to demand a return to normal. We need to find a touchstone to normal and demand it. And I fear that we won't. Canada's childcare facilities, this is today, are closing even as daycare fees rise. I mean, that's not surprising. The costs are going up. Costs to parents are going up. People are unemployed. Do you know how many businesses have shut down? If a business is shut down, what happens is, let me just explain it to you really quickly, is you no longer have a place to go to work. And so you can stay home and take care of a child, say, who was previously in childcare, say, right? So I think that it's interesting that like, this is even kind of surprising. And this is a think tank, right? So I think that here's January 9th, 2021, and Ontario expands list of frontline workers eligible for free emergency childcare as schools remain closed. So my son went to daycare at the beginning of this. He returned to daycare and that was fine. There was no outbreaks. Everybody was fine. They weren't wearing masks. The kids weren't wearing masks at all. Under 2 is exempt, but at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody was wearing masks. It wasn't until September and he was leaving and we were going into school, so it didn't matter. But the emergency childcare means that government subsidizes the daycare, right? Because the parents aren't paying, the government's paying for it, right? They're paying for the spots. So again, the government is, just like the media, the government is making sure that the daycares comply with the government mandates. And I mean, they have to comply anyway. They're ministry mandated, or they're ministry governed. And so whatever the ministry says they have to do. But it's very interesting what's going on with regards to the media trying to push the uncertainty of it all. Usually in a pandemic, in an emergency situation, you don't want the public to feel like things are off kilter and like uneven and worrisome, right? You don't want the public to feel like that because then they lose faith in you. But these guys seem to want that. They seem to be fostering that. It seems really strange. Everything seems to be a scandal, and then they repackage the scandal into a good news story somehow. It's really weird. And I don't have I don't have an explanation for why, right? Necessarily. I mean, I have theories, right? But it's happening, and it's a strange thing to live through. That's what I mean by it's really weird. It's a strange thing to open up the newspaper and see them talking about racism as the most important thing. It's like, have you seen the economy? Have you seen the number of businesses that have been decimated? Racism? What in the world? And then even if they discuss the number of businesses talked about, they discuss it in terms of female-owned businesses or black-owned businesses. This is divisive. This is not a helpful way to do things. And yet they're doing it anyway. And they're doing it anyway at someone's behest. This is not, they didn't all wake up one day and go, oh, it'd be really great to write about, like black-owned businesses, and then flag the black-owned businesses in Zayre's or, whichever grocery store you go to. Like 20 years ago, that would be racist. People would be upset at how racist that is. Now, that's equity. Communism. Okay, back to this. Justin Trudeau's doing this, spending. Okay, this is, this is vaccinations. This is Justin Trudeau's policy. This is exactly the same as Justin Trudeau's policy. Billions. White House is set up to unveil sweeping vaccine confidence campaign. The White House is set to unveil a $1.5 billion public relations campaign aimed at boosting vaccine confidence and uptake across the United States. Vaccine hesitancy, all of the ads about vaccinations. There's billions of dollars. How do you account for this kind of money? Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. How many hotels does that buy for homeless people, right? The thing is, the cost of these things it's the initial cost plus the running cost plus electricity, which continues to go up. And these things don't make money, so they're not maintaining themselves, right? So the increasing cost is balloons, and at some point equals yearly the cost of purchasing the thing. So governments shouldn't be getting into this crap anyway, but regardless, whatever. Here's our health minister bragging about 3 months to match what the US has achieved in a day for vaccinations. Vaccinations is all distractionary talk anyway. Elon Musk isn't getting one. Yep, he's never locked down his factory and nobody even blinked. Elon Musk, I'm essential. Forget it. I'm essential. Yep. And he's not getting a vaccine. Israel's Supreme Court nullifies vaccine passport travel restrictions. Very interesting. This is from Chris Sky. He says, Israeli Supreme Court blasts government handling of COVID limits on air travel, nullifies key restrictions on travelers. I don't know what it's going to take. The whole world seems to have gone completely mad, really. Another thing that the government is doing that seems offside is the Bill C-7. Yesterday, it made it through the Senate. Here, Senator Pamela Wallin mentioned mature minors and her support for Bill C-7. So this is I'm not gonna listen to Pamela Wallin's speech here, but I just want to show you the Senate is the body that discussed this bill yesterday or in the last couple of days, and yesterday it got through, and people are celebrating this, but it's not necessarily a good thing. Here's David Lametti. He's the Attorney General. He says, our changes to the medical assisted in dying C7 have been ratified by the Senate and now await royal assent. The long wait is nearly over for Canadians who are suffering intolerably and who wish to seek MAID under the new rules. This is opening it up for people who who experience mental health issues and want to access medically assisted dying. The medical health issues no longer prevent them from accessing that, and there's a lot of people who are upset about that. And here's an outline of Senate representation, just for interest's sake. This is similar to parliamentary representation. Ontario and Quebec have the lion's share of the seats, and the rest of the seats are kind of strewn about the rest of Canada. And we might talk about why at the end, but regardless, I think it's funny. So this little meme here compares Quebec with Alberta and British Columbia. Population is both 8 million for Quebec, 8.5 million for Alberta and BC. GDP is 500 million or 500,000 in millions, or 500 million in 2011 for GDP for Alberta and BC, and 345 million for Quebec. And seats in the Senate for Quebec, 24. Seats in the Senate for Alberta and BC, 12. So what they're saying is this decision doesn't represent Canada. That's what they're trying to say with that meme. Maybe, maybe not. This is an interesting story, and I think one that is worth reporting on. It didn't really fit in MAID, but it fits kind of in the legal framework of this, the mature minors part. And if you don't know about this, it's concerning, because if you've got kids in school, if you've got kids who are being helped by helping professions, whatever, or within those infrastructures, this can happen to you, right? Or if you have not lost custody, but have half-time custody with your wife or something to that effect, or husband, something like this could happen to you. Just received word from the BC Prosecution Service on the arrest of the father who opposes his daughter's gender transition. BCPS approved criminal contempt proceedings. They sought a warrant on March 8th. Warrant granted and executed yesterday. CD is in custody until March 19th. So the BC, this is a communication between the BC police and this person, I guess. They can confirm that the Crown has approved proceedings to find CD in criminal contempt of a court order in this case. The proceedings were initiated on July 30th, 2020. On March 8th, 2021, the BCPS attended before the Justice, seeking a warrant as a result of allegations that CD had committed further breaches of the court order. The warrant was granted and executed on March 16th. A bail hearing was held on that day, and the conclusion, the court reserved its decision until March 19th. The CD was remanded in custody until that day. Any public documents must be obtained from the court registry. So I believe that's tomorrow, yeah. And here's the background on the case. BC father could face jail time for speaking about his child's hormone treatment. And I can't remember all of the details of the case, so I'm not sure what the original gender of the child was. But this was a mature minor situation, and the father's protests, the father saying this is not a good idea, don't do this, were ignored. And then were he to speak about it with media, he got jail time, and now he's in jail. So this is not the country that we grew up in. This is not the country that I grew up in. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I said, like, I grew up in Canada in the 1980s, and I remember kind of that endless possibility, like, man, what's 2020 going to bring, right? It's going to be amazing. Even in the early 90s, like even with the financial difficulties the province and the country were in the early to mid 90s, it still seemed optimistic, right? There was that the best is yet to come. And now it's like they want to burn everything down. They want to say, like, everything that we've done is terrible and wrong, and if only we could just get rid of all of those people who built the country, then everything will be just fine. And that's where we're at. That's a weird place to be. It's a weird thing to live through. It is. Michael Spavor moving to China. His trial will begin Friday morning in Dandong, which happens to be the exact time officials from the U.S. and China are meeting in Anchorage to Thursday evening. Do you think that the trial's outcome is tied to U.S. officials upholding their request for extradition? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, a trial means movement, so at least they're not rotting in prison anymore. Maybe there's some kind of resolution on the horizon, although it will be poor resolution. It will not be a satisfactory resolution in my mind. I think that there's lots missing out of a satisfactory resolution. Like, we're years down the road from a satisfactory resolution for this. Pierre Poilievre moving into a bit of spending. I thought this was kind of funny. We have more places in Canada, says Mr. Poilievre, where there is no one than places where there is anyone. With so much land and so few people, why is our real estate among the world's priciest? Answer, local governments block supply. Federal government subsidize demand. In the short term, we get massive wealth inequality as mansion dwellers get price gains while renters pay more and can never afford to own. In the long term, the bubble will burst when interest rates rise and the economy detonates. Yep, that's pretty accurate, I think, and that's unfortunate. Aaron O'Toole says a conservative government, they won't cut foreign aid. They'll keep it where Trudeau's foreign aid levels are at, because, he's going to do what Trudeau's doing better. They're going to build back better. With their partners and Joe Biden, they'll build back better. We just have to get rid of those Confederationists, right? Oh man, if we just get rid of those Confederation people, we'll get to that at the end of the show. This is what the conservative tweet the other day was trying to say. What it said was that Justin Trudeau cares about your jobs more than he cares about his job. That was what the original tweet said. I'm not going to go get it because I'm lazy this morning. But the Conservative Party tried again on the 17th. The Prime Minister is busy planning for an election to save his own job rather than working to save Canadians' jobs. There we go. It wasn't tongue-tied this time. It says Justin Trudeau is more worried about saving his job than doing his job. Electioneering that kind of lands flat. Like, I don't even know what that means. He's trying to plan for an election to save his own job. He could just sit back and say, hey, Jagmeet, you cool to continue voting with me? Great. We'll see you at the end of this term when we can have another strong minority government to do all of the craziest things that no Canadians want. Bye. Like, he doesn't have to do any of this. He doesn't have to have an election. He might want one to have more ability to spend money with less oversight. He might. But that's not this. That's not what this is alleging. So, I don't know. Out of touch. Talk about the lockdowns, maybe. They won't talk about the lockdowns. They support the lockdowns. They're like, you know what? We should probably lock down harder. Here is PhD in common sense. And he's asking, well, CTV Toronto is reporting, the federal government paid out more than $80 billion through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, CERB, to almost 9 million Canadians last year. And he says, well, that's fantastic, but what happened to the other 300 plus billion the Liberals withdrew from our bank in the name of COVID relief? When's the budget coming? Oh man, that was a good question 2 years ago, right? When are we going to get that budget? Oh, COVID, we can't possibly do a budget. Oh, it's we're going to have an election. We can't possibly do a budget. Oh no, we've got a wee scandal. We can't possibly do a budget. Right? If Scott Bryson hadn't stepped down, we'd have a budget. Gosh darn it. A Quebec woman, do you remember this? Oh, Mr. Trudeau. A Quebec woman is suing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for allegedly suggesting she was a racist. Good. I hope she wins. This was a big deal like 4 years ago, 2017, 2018. Before the 2019 election. She was manhandled by the security. I don't know. I think she's got a case. I hope she wins. I'll pay attention to that. Here is Canadian Forces and U.S. Navy is spying on Ezra Levant. It's an interesting read. Why are they doing that? I'm interested to... Apparently, YouTube is a big factor in the 2019 election. Not that big. Not that big, apparently. Like, it didn't have much of an impact, I don't think. I mean, not on the outcome, anyway. Okay, this just makes me laugh. First, I want to point out that there is Confederate College. Here's Confederate College in Thunder Bay, right? Confederate College. And Confederation is like Canada's under Confederation, right? Canadian Confederation was the process by which 3 colonies of Canada, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, were united into one federation called the Dominion of Canada on July 1st, 1867. Upon Confederation, which had formerly been called what had formerly been called the Province of Canada, was divided into two provinces of Ontario and Quebec. Thus, the new Dominion initially consisted of four provinces, including the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Over the years, since Confederation, Canada has seen numerous territorial changes and expansion, resulting in the current number of 10 provinces and 3 territories. A Confederate flag? Okay. Symbols can have a powerful impact on a community, especially when they are used to make others feel unwelcome or unsafe. We are investigating such a case after a Confederate flag was found flying on a public flagpole in Union Cemetery, located in the community of Arlington. Now, I'm assuming they mean an American Confederate flag. I don't think they're meaning like an upper Canadian Confederation flag. Like, yay, Confederation. They're upset about it, so... We are now investigating the incident as a potential hate-motivated crime. While the possession and display of a Confederate flag is not in itself a crime, it is believed there was another flag on the flagpole that was removed so the offensive flag could be raised. However, it talks here about the high standards for freedom of speech in Canada and the difficulty of proving hate speech. However, it can be considered a hate-motivated offense if a crime is committed while prejudicial views are being expressed. While the value of the stolen item in this case was small, the statement made through the theft and flag raising that followed make it a serious matter. So they took the flag from the flagpole that was flying there. So the theft of that flag is now a hate-motivated crime because after stealing the flag, they rose a Confederate flag up. I don't want to live here anymore. This is like the police officers who are attacking the kid for playing hockey, right? You get down or I'm going to tase you. I'm going to effing tase you. What happened? Did they lace Tim Hortons coffee with something? Like, did you see, this is going to be ridiculously niche, but there's going to probably be at least 3 people who have watched this. The Game episode of Star Trek where Wesley Crusher and his girlfriend at the time, which is funny because he only ever had like 1 or 2, wouldn't get in on the game, and the game was like a headset you put on, and it, like, all you have to do is put the discs into the like worm mouth things, and it takes over the Enterprise, and they're running around, and then Picard uses his power and Worf to like get Wesley. I can't remember exactly what the resolution of that episode was, but this, where we're living right now, feels like that. It's like, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Get your mask. Oh, no. All right. I watched far too much Star Trek when I was younger. That's okay. Canada's a confederation. Those Confederate flags. Okay, that's enough out of me. This is insane. It's insane. This is a weird, crazy thing to live through. I'm sorry that we have to live through it together. I'm glad we get to live through it together, but I'm sorry we all have to live through it. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's awful. There's every reason to think that we're sliding into communism, but they keep saying just 2 more weeks, just 2 more weeks. How long are we going to believe it? Like, just a couple more weeks before everybody's like, you know what? They said that recently. Happy 1-year anniversary. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.